Times Easy and an audience speaking live to everyone. And thank you for doing this in Bali. You just arrived this morning. And how was your first impression of Bali?
Well, I've been to Bali many times, so.
But what did you think so far today, especially given the G20 and the activities? Was it harder to get in?
It was a bit harder to get in, but yeah, I think I've been to the same hotel before when I was on vacation. So yeah, it's a nice place to be.
Thank you. So there were a lot of prepared questions that I cannot ask, but now I can ask, right, to you many of these questions.
Sure.
Because I know it's top of mind for everyone, and the way I do this, the best way is just ask direct. Is that okay?
Sure, anything goes, yeah. I can imagine which questions will come up.
Yeah. So maybe I'll ask first, just crypto overall. What's going on in the industry today? Because in my mind, it feels like the 2008 great financial crisis.
I think that's probably an accurate analogy. I think we just seen another very big player going down. A few months ago, there was Luna, Three Arrows. Luna was big, Three Arrows was smaller, and then with Celsius, Voyager, they're even smaller, but then FTX is big. So with such a big player going down, I think we're seeing $30–40 billion of value that's in FTX valuation that was before that they raised that. Plus quite a few $1 billion of user funds that's kind of gone. So with this type of events happening, it's devastating for the industry. So a lot of consumer confidence is shaken, and I think basically we've been set back a few years. Now regulators rightfully will scrutinize this industry much harder, which is probably a good thing, to be honest. I think now, before the regulations are much more focused on KYC and AML, I've always been saying, look, you got to focus on the exchange operations. So business models, proof of reserves, where the user funds. So I think we'll come into a lot more scrutiny on those fronts. But actually, that's good for the industry. So having that setback, short term is very painful for a lot of retail investors. That's on FTX, etc. But we feel that pain. But longer term, I think this is another wake-up call to say, hey, look, we're in a new industry. There's a lot of risks, and we need to learn how to deal with those risks and how to build a much healthier industry.
So you know what happened with FTX, and I know you can't comment on the FTX side, but what actually happened the last 3 days? I mean, this is only 72, 96 hours, but I mean, if you can share with us what's on your mind and what's going on.
Yeah, so I think the last 3 days is just a revelation of problems. The problems were there way longer, right? So like this problem wasn't created in the last 3 days. So basically, we have an exchange, or FTX is misappropriating user funds. They were taking user funds to do other things. And I think the trigger was like a week ago. There was a CoinDesk article. And then my team says, well, hey, CZ, we still have this, we still have a lot of FTT coins. Like, what? Should we sell it? Sure, why not? So the next day, there was a big transaction reported by Where Alerts saying that like $580 million worth of FTT was transferred to Binance.com. And my team's like, CZ, this is our transfer. I was like, well, really, are you sure? He's like, yeah, he's sure. And should we be, like there was discussions in the community, and should we be transparent about it? It's like, yeah, sure, we should be transparent about it. And then he said, CZ, you should write a tweet, because we don't, like what we'll call the interns, our PR team says, we don't really know how to write this particular one. This is quite sensitive. So I was actually just going out to meet 2 of my friends, who actually also came to Indonesia now. I was on my way out to meet with them, and then so I just wrote a tweet in a few minutes. But I wanted to explain, like, how do we have this much, right? So we can't just have $580 million worth of FTT all of a sudden. We got it. We didn't buy it from secondary markets. We got it as a transaction of our exit, equity exit out of FTX a year and a half ago, which was publicly reported. So I said that, and then I didn't know my phone will blow up like over the rest of the evening. So, and I also didn't know, like, no, the second day I said, look, I didn't know this is the, I think the word we used was the straw that broke the camel's back. And that's before Sam Sbf called me 24 hours later. I thought it was just causing a lot of waves in the Twitter in the community. 24 hours later, Sam calls me and says, "Hey, CZ, can we talk?" Okay, and then he says, "Well, I thought he was going to do an OTC deal, right? I thought he was going to ask, hey, CZ, why don't we do an OTC deal? Then we can put all the negative comments out, then confidence is restored." I thought he wanted to do that. But instead, he just said, look, we have much bigger troubles. I said, look, we don't want users to be hurt, and we want to protect the users. So the deal, to be honest, I can't comment on any specifics on the deals, but from our perspective, the deal did not make sense from a number of fronts. From a financial perspective, is a big hole. From new users, FTX, we have very high overlap. We cover all the regions they cover, and they have much less users than us. From a technology or product perspective, I think we have a superior product. They don't have anything that we don't have. So our original intention was to let's save the users. But then the news of misappropriating user funds, and especially US regulatory agencies' investigations, we're like, okay, we can't touch that anymore. So, and then we said, look, and then as soon as I understood we couldn't touch it anymore, I said, let's make that announcement as quickly as possible, because we don't want to do a slow no. If we're going to do a no, we do a quick no. That's one of my principles in business. So then this way we don't drag on for a long time, and then we also remove any uncertainty or doubt in the community, because as you can see, when the deal was going on, the deal was happening, crypto was dropping. Uncertainty is actually worse than negative news. So when the news is out, everybody knew, okay, this is where we are. So we said, look, let's announce it as quickly as possible. So we announced it. And then after we announced it, I've been trying to keep quiet to the extent possible. So I didn't appear on any TV interviews, etc. But this was arranged weeks ago. Yes. So I still want to honor that commitment. So I flew here. Now here we are.
No, but thank you for being so open, given the circumstances and the fact that this is a global news, and crypto enthusiasts is everywhere. And where do you see Indonesia here? And I want to take it a bit out from the story, the recent event. And you already mentioned that this takes a 2-year step back. But yet the enthusiasm of crypto, especially for the young people here, is so high. What should you do as an actor, as a good actor in business? How should you go about this to bring back trust into the industry?
So as one of the largest players in the industry, we have to lead by example. So I think the number one thing we have to do is being much, much more transparent. So anything we can do to increase transparency, we need to do. So proof of reserves. Proof of reserves is going to take a couple of weeks, mainly due to the vendor being very busy. We're like, okay, let's do that, but before that, let's publish all of our cold wallet addresses. They were pretty public before anyway, so we published yesterday 6 top coins, which covers actually 80–90% of the user funds. So now people can see on one page which addresses are the cold wallets. Anything that we can do to improve transparency. And I think we also want to educate regulators all around the world. How do you do audits on crypto exchanges? Not just KYC ML, which is important, but how do you check the cold wallets? How do you do user balance reconciliations? How do you check transaction logs? How do you use on-chain monitoring tools to do this? So all of these things we do internally. We do real-time reconciliations across multiple aspects so that we can try to, and if any balance goes off, we get alerted in real time. So should we make those kind of systems public? I think all of these things we need to do as an industry, which actually, on the long term, I think will make the industry much healthier. So all of these things needs to happen. Yeah.
And yet, this essentially the idea of crypto itself is where everybody becomes its own bank in that sense. Yet you mentioned that now regulators is going to step in, given that it plays such a big role in society. Just as a number, almost 13 million Indonesians have a crypto account one way or the other, from less than 1 million pre-COVID. So that makes up 5% of society today have some crypto exposure one way or the other. So regulators, good or bad, needed or not needed, and how should it play a role?
Yeah, I think there's two topics there. Number one is I think regulators are definitely needed. I don't think our society is advanced enough to live in a world without rules. So once we have rules, then that's what regulations are. Somebody have to make some rules. So, but doesn't mean all the rules are good. It doesn't mean all the rules are bad. So good rules are good, bad rules are bad. The rules need to be sensible. If the rule says, hey, we're just going to ban crypto altogether in Indonesia, that's one type of rule. I think that's obviously going to be bad. If we say anything goes, that's also not so good in general. There will be a lot of scammers, a lot of guys doing business in a bad way and cause a lot of damage. So we need to find the balance. So it's not an easy task. So that's on the regulation side. And then on the crypto side, with people holding their own assets, be their own bank, I think eventually the technology will get there. But today, it's not easy. Today, technically, you can. The technology is there, but it's just not easy to use. It's not easy for an average person to say, hey, I'm going to save my private keys, have multiple copies of backups. So if I lose my computer, if I lose my hardware wallet, I can restore it. And worst case is we all die. So if I'm no longer around, how does my kids inherit it? Most people, with the tools today, we can do it, but it's just not very easy. 99% of people don't know how to do it. 99% of people probably do not even know how to securely encrypt a USB backup, right? So we need to make the tools easier. Once we have those tools, then more and more, as the tools become easier to use while being very secure, more and more people will shift to that. But today, if you look at the real situation today, the majority of people would be much more comfortable using an email, password, and call customer support if they forget it. And we also have many cases where a person passed away. The next of kin comes with a death certificate. We validate it, wait for a month, just make sure that the guy doesn't come back alive. And then we give the funds to that kin. So today, the majority of people, for the majority of what we call regular, normal people, a centralized exchange is easier to use, even though they have to go through KYC, AML, which is actually quite cumbersome. So we need to transition the industry. The industry improves in incremental steps, not giant leaps forward. Yeah.